And look, I hate historical contexts. I hate that, when you guys were talking about it earlier in the show.
You must
that
hate Nick.
I was about to say, that doesn't speak well for our relationship.
No, because I do a lot of the TV stuff in Boston sometimes, and, Game 7 against Milwaukee, they're bringing up the Celtics record. I'm sitting alongside Tommy Heinsohn, and Tommy Heinsohn played in some of those Game 7s. So
like the long-term historical context, I understand.
What you're saying is, when you talk about how Cleveland is in the head of the Raptors, or Cleveland's record against the Raptors, you're not really talking about the Raptors. You're talking about DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry.
And I'm not really talking about Cleveland. I'm talking about LeBron.
James.
Talking about LeBron against their stars.
Right, but here's why that, to me, is completely inconsequential. Number one, and this is less important, but the Raptors are a different team, especially with that second unit. And you got OG Anunoby in the starting lineup, Serge Ibaka in his first full season with that team. They're kind of a different team in that way. And Cleveland is a completely different team. When Cleveland was kicking the crap out of the Raptors, when they were in their heads, they had Kyrie Irving, and they could do a lot more things offensively and could count on more offensively than they can count on right now. I think the Raptors, watching what they did, we went over the stats yesterday. The fourth quarter was abysmal for Toronto. Their shots at the rim were brutal in Game 1. I think they're far more likely to play better than Cleveland is to duplicate the success they had in Game 1.
Now, that's a great point. I mean, go ahead, Mr. History.
Well, Mr. History. We can't, when we're talking about what is duplicable and what is not, I understand why you wouldn't want to, because I saw the same thing you said.
I said that during the season, too. But I point out to Nick that last month of the season where they had those two contests where Toronto was flying in. Now, I would count those. Now you are right, and especially being in locker rooms. I've had these questions, and I don't care. The Vikings, the Packers, we didn't lose those games, so you are right. That effect is not on the whole organization. And now, in sports where guys aren't together as long, sometimes the numbers don't hold the weight as far as history as they used to.
All right, but and I agree, when they were showing the Celtics all-time record in Game 7s versus the Bucks, that was silly because a lot of those were literally done with Bill Russell. And so but when I'm talking about things that happened this year or last year, or the fact that the Cavs have won 4 straight playoff games in Toronto, and the 3 best players in this series, the 4 best players, if Kevin Love were to show up for the series, have been a part of all of those games. I do think that type of history matters. I don't think the Raptors have that type of meltdown at the end against any other team in the league. They might not be in.
They didn't melt down.
If you miss 11 straight shots to finish the game, CC.
If you watch that last tape, it wasn't like it was just a given. Any team could have gone through that sequence right there. I know what a meltdown is. I'm not going to allow Toronto be accused of a meltdown.
Do you look at let me just ask, do you look at what happened at the end of regulation when the Raptors went all like Charles Smith against the Bulls, unable to finish that last possession off? Is that a meltdown?
Well, I think
to me, that's just
I think DeRozan, if I'm going to be totally honest, the tip-in by Valanciunas that he was then devastated about and he slammed his hands on the ground afterwards, that one's bad luck. But DeRozan's initial play on that was a bad play. Even if DeRozan had made his shot, it would have been about 4 seconds left for Cleveland to tie or win the game. That was to me, a panicked play. Instead of he had time, he could have gathered, there were things he could have done. When you go the final 4 minutes of what CC you called yesterday, the biggest game this version of the Raptors have ever played, and the final 4 minutes of regulation, you don't make a field goal. I don't know what else to call it.
It's not a meltdown when you can't make shots, when you can't get the ball inbounds, when you can't get a set. Now, the inbounds play, that was a bad mistake. But a meltdown, Nick, I just think there's so many other ways we can describe it compared to. I've seen meltdowns, and I didn't see one in game number 1. If you want to talk about a meltdown, there's one meltdown, and that's Kevin Love. All right? Kevin Love, where he has played as a player, has melted down to the version that we see. Who's going to show up? Now, that's a real meltdown with no exaggeration.
Chris, you surprised that Ty Lue's going back to Kevin Love?
A little bit, especially how effective Tristan Thompson's been, especially against Valanciunas. Tristan Thompson is the physical counter to Valanciunas, but Ty Lue made the decision late in the season to just be very offensive-oriented. That's why he started off the season, or the first round, with Jeff Green playing power forward. He wants to keep trotting Kevin Love out there to see what he can do. But my concern if there is a concern in Game 2 for Toronto, It's that their offense devolved in Game 1. It devolved back into the team they were last year. This isolation-heavy, one-on-one DeRozan and Lowry. If I'm Dwayne Casey over the last 48 hours, and Nick Nurse, his top assistant who's charged with this offense, I'm telling these guys, no, Sixers are trust the process. Toronto's got to be trust the offense. You've got to trust what we've done all season long. Yes, we shot in the low 30s three-point-wise, but we are a much better three-point shooting team than that. Keep moving the ball. Keep trusting our teammates. If you do that, they can still get back in the series.
And their two-star players, it's up to that offensive staff to get them some good looks late in the game. Because if you look at that game late in the game, they did not give them any chance. They got
isolation. It was DeRozan.
Every shot that those two took. Now the other guys got some open shots. But every shot that those two took was contested by the Cavs.
And by the way, as far as one of those two, Kyle Lowry, I do not expect him to be effective in the fourth quarters of this series because I think LeBron James will erase him in the fourth quarter of this series as he did in Game 1. I think that is the Cavs' plan, by the way, is, okay, if DeRozan is going to go off individually, we might get beat. But it's not going to be both of them. It's not going to be the duo, and that's why Lowry can only get up 12 shots in the game. But I want to go back to something you said earlier, which is we're not going to expect the Cavs supporting squad to play as well as they did. Okay, do we expect LeBron to have another 12 for 30? Because I don't. Do we expect LeBron to have another game that he called one of his worst of the season? I don't. Do I expect DeMar DeRozan to be much better than he was? 22 points on 50% shooting? Maybe it's 27 points on 50% shooting. Like, I think that the Cavs, while the role players might regress somewhat, JR is not going to get 20 again. LeBron's not going to go 12 for 30 again. He hasn't gone 12 for 30 in the playoffs, I think, since I would have to think the first finals against the Warriors. Like, that game's not duplicable either.
Okay, but balance that out a little bit. I agree with you. LeBron plays better. I wonder how much he has left in the tank. He goes 47 minutes. This is another quick turnaround this game, but I do think he plays better. But you have to balance that against what other Cavs are going to play worse. I mean, Jeff Green is going to play worse. I'm ready to put every nickel in my pocket. Jeff Green. JR is probably going to shoot a lower percentage. Kyle Korver's a wild card. I think Korver can have the same type of game. He did that in the Indiana series. But those guys are going to regress. And I just believe in Toronto.
16 points from Tristan Thompson. We can bank that?
No, I don't think you can bank that either. But I believe in this Raptors supporting cast. I believe, I questioned it all season long. Into February, I said, look, can these young guys continue? Can they keep playing at this level? And all season long, we saw Van Vliet make big shots. We saw Siakam play great defense. We saw Jakob Poeltl play good minutes for this team. We saw this supporting cast for 82 games play effectively. We saw them in the first round against Washington play effectively. I can't sit here after one game and say that they're just going to turtle up and not play effectively.
Chris Mannix.
I'm taking the Raptors, by the way.
Clearly, you're for this, not just for tonight, for the series.
Right, here for the series.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.